I love this next story because it tells you all that you need to know about ideologues. So last week, Senator Rand Paul criticized the Common Core school standards in an email to his supporters, and he claimed that they contain, quote, anti-American propaganda and revisionist history that ignores the faith of our founders. But the reality about Common Core is the following, quote, while the Common Core is a set of math and English standards, it does not have a history, civics, or social studies curriculum. The only readings the Common Core requires are the Declaration of Independence, the preamble to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and Lincoln's second inaugural address. That's it. That's it. So he totally made it up. Whether it's him or one of his staffers, they were just saying, whatever, send out the email, it's anti-American propaganda, revisionist history. There isn't even a history part of it! Totally made up! Now, not only that, Kentucky, which of course is Rand Paul's state, was one of the first states to adopt Common Core, and, quote, college and career readiness rates jumped by over 25% since their adoption. So, the data on this shows that Common Core has helped the state of Kentucky, but of course Rand Paul and his staff didn't look that up, didn't care, didn't do the research before speaking about the topic. And again, they didn't even bother to find out whether or not Common Core actually had a history section. They just put it in there anyway. Hey, Common Core is anti-American propaganda and revisionist history that ignores the faith of our founders. Nowhere near true. That topic isn't even in the conversation, isn't part of the Common Core standards. So what does this show you? Well, it shows you what I mentioned when I started the story here. This is how ideologues function. Now, believe me, I fully understand that it maybe was the case that one of his staffers was the one who sent it out and did it and he didn't know about it, but, I mean, if that is the case, then it's ridiculous that he doesn't control his staffers better or check everything before letters are sent out in his name, so I really don't think that's an excuse. But what this stems from is Rand Paul's dislike of government. So when you think in that way, everything that's anti-government just becomes the default. We covered another story of him a few weeks ago where he just made up something about disability. He's like, half the people on disability suffer from back pain and anxiety, I think he said. Well, then we came out here, and Think Progress did a great article on this. They did a tremendous amount of research, and I laid out all the actual data for you. I broke it down as to where the money actually goes and what percentage is actually for people that have that problem, and it's nowhere near true. And even the idea that there's rampant fraud in Social Security disability, that's a myth. There is fraud, right? But it's not rampant. The numbers were incredibly low. So it all stems from the position of, he's working backwards from what his ideological position is. His position is government bad. Government is bad. Government is inefficient. Government can't do anything right. Big government tries to do propaganda, and he tries to make the facts fit that afterwards. Now, is it fair, and is it their legitimate point to criticize Common Core? Absolutely. There are intelligent ways to disagree with it, but this is not one of them. And by the way, in my opinion, I'm in favor of the idea of Common Core generally speaking, but I would also love to just dive into the details and figure out, if they're really teaching all the right things. But the general idea of have some national standards as opposed to letting the states do everything or local areas do everything, it's hard to make a good argument to disagree with that. It really is, because we all know that in Alabama and Arkansas and Mississippi, there's going to be real propaganda in those textbooks. We've seen it. We've covered it on the show. Where in the deep red states, they fight to try to get creationism in the science class alongside evolution. They fight to try to change history in a way that benefits them and conservative beliefs. I mean, we spoke about they changed the name of the slave trade to like the Triangle Trade or something. They tried to downplay the Native American genocide and make it seem like, no, actually they were all slaughtering each other and they were bad also, and then we just came in and just took part in the same kind of thing that they were doing. So they try to downplay it in so many different ways. So that's another way that what they're talking about here is projection. How Rand Paul's like, the goddamn Democrats and big government is ruining everything, and they're propagandizing and they're indoctrinating people. No, your party does it way more often. I mean, what is liberal propaganda when it comes to education? Teach science in the science class, teach math in the math class, be objective about history and say the things that we did that were right and wrong. I don't see any liberal propaganda. All I see is Republican propaganda. But again, the most important part is this is how an ideologue functions. And a lot of people would fire back at me. Believe me, I could already see the criticism in my head, what'll be said from the dumbass conservatives when I release this. They say, Kyle, you're an ideologue too, just a different kind of ideologue. I could not disagree with that more. Because my take on the idea of big government versus small government is it depends heavily on what issue we're discussing. So if we're talking about the NSA, just give me as small government as possible. If we're talking about war, give me as small as possible and still allow us to protect the nation and not do all these offensive wars and all that stuff. If we're talking about inefficient regulations, and they do exist in many ways, great, cut that, and I want smaller government in that respect. But if we're talking about healthcare, for example, I think we should have a Medicare for all system. I want bigger government in that respect. College, I want that funded by taxpayers. I want a bigger government in that respect. So come to me with different issues, and we'll go issue by issue, and I'll tell you what my opinion is. So in no way am I rigid ideologically where I say, hey, all big government all the time, or all small government all the time. No, it depends on the issue.